Carbon. Carbon can be used in a human body because it can make bonds with other carbon, with one, for example, or even with thousands. Another reason is that there are some which also don't dissolve in water. And all these carbons when together are called the carbon skeleton. And usually to these carbons then attaches a hydrogen. Carbons have 4 electrons in the outermost valence shell and can make a covalent bond, that is the usual form of bonding with other things, with 1 covalent bond with hydrogen, with 2 with oxygen, and with 3 with nitrogen, for example. And there can be then a functional group, there's then another element attached to the carbon and the hydrogen. And such a small monomer of the carbon skeleton and the hydrogen together, then they can come together through dehydration. So a hydrogen comes away from one of the monomer and a hydroxyl from the other one away, and then they're together. And they can also be split up again through the opposite, through hydrolysis, so water comes to it. And if such monomers are together, they can, if similar or identical monomers are all coming together, they are forming then a polymer. So many to them, a polymer then. And if they're very big, they're called then macromolecules, so large ones of them. There can be isomers. That is basically, so there can be C6H12O6, that is glucose and fructose. The only difference between glucose and fructose is that these 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen and 6 oxygen are sorted differently. So an isomer is the same ingredients but differently sorted. Glucose and fructose is the same stuff technically, but it's differently sorted. And that is an isomer. And that is according to Gerard and Sandra Grabowski's Principles of Anatomy and Physiology book on the page 42. But this is no substitute for medical knowledge. And welcome. I'm trying to learn biochemistry today. Carbon and its functional groups. And after we've done that, we're going to do tiptoe yoga. And if you participate in the tiptoe yoga, then it's on the screen. Carbon and its functional groups. No, you were part of the functional groups with the certificate. But I just realized that it is about the functional groups with party. Now, the chain of carbon, this is part 3 or 4. The chain of carbon atoms in an organic molecule is called the carbon skeleton. So all the carbons in it are the carbon skeleton. Most of these carbons are bonded to hydrogen atoms. So there's a skeleton of all these carbons, and most of them are bonded to hydrogen. Attached to the carbon skeleton are distinctive functional groups in which other elements form bonds with carbon and hydrogen atoms. So there's the long carbon thing with all the hydrogen at the sides, and where another element docks onto it, forming a bond with the carbon and the hydrogen. And each type of functional group has a specific arrangement of atoms that confers characteristic chemical properties upon organic molecules. So they're doing different things, or they're having different characteristics of chemical properties. Table 2.5 lists the most common functional groups of organic molecules and describes some of their properties. Because organic molecules are often big, there are shorthand methods for representing the structural formulas. Are there long carbon skeleton chains, and when there's a functional group and another one? Or is there just a long one and there's one? Figure 2.15 shows 2 ways to indicate the structure of the sugar glucose, a molecule with a ring-shaped carbon skeleton that has several hydroxyl groups attached. Small organic molecules can combine into very large molecules, called macromolecules. Macromolecules are usually polymers. Large molecules formed by covalent bonding of many identical or similar small building blocks molecules are called monomers. So a small organic molecule can combine with others to become a macromolecule. They are usually polymers. What does it mean? Large molecules formed, the explanation. Large molecules formed by covalent bonding of many identical or similar small building block molecules called monomers. No? Or are these the polymers? Polymers are consisting of the monomers. They combine, they become macromolecules. And macromolecules are usually polymers, and that are large molecules formed by covalent bonding of many identical or similar small building block molecules, which are then called monomers. So many monomers can come together, which are identical or similar to other monomers, in becoming a polymer, and such a big polymer with many identical and similar monomers together of small organic molecules is called, if it's large, a macromolecule. When two monomers join together, the reaction usually involves dehydration synthesis, the elimination of a hydrogen atom from one monomer and a hydroxyl group from the other. There's most of the time dehydration happening if they come together, and there's hydrogen from one atom and hydroxyl from the other removed. The elimination of a hydrogen atom from one monomer and a hydroxyl group from the other monomer. Okay, hydrogen from one monomer, hydroxyl from the other one, dehydration synthesis. Hydrogen atom, hydroxyl. Macromolecules such as carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids are assembled in the cell via dehydration synthesis. Such macromolecules can be carbohydrates, lipids, or proteins, and nucleic acids, coming together through the dehydration synthesis. Hydrogen atom from one monomer, hydroxyl, hydrogen from the other, and hydroxyl from the other monomer. When macromolecules like carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, or proteins are assembled that way. It is also possible for macromolecules to be broken down into monomers via hydrolysis, and these macromolecules can be broken down into monomers via hydrolysis, so water to it. Molecules that have the same molecular formula but different structures are called isomers. Okay, for example, the molecular formulas for the sugars glucose and fructose are both C6H12O6. The individual atoms, however, are positioned differently along the carbon skeleton. Okay, there can be molecules with the same ingredients, the same molecular formula. They're then called isomers. Glucose and fructose, same ingredients, C6H12O6, C6H12O6, but they're differently sorted. Glucose, fructose, along with carbon skeleton. Carbon and its functional groups. Carbon has several properties that make it particularly useful for living organisms. For one thing, it can form bonds with 1 to thousands of other carbon atoms to produce large molecules that can have many different shapes. So one reason it can make with 1 or even thousands of other carbon atoms one big carbon atom. This means that the body can build many different organic compounds, each of which has a unique structure and function. So based on that, the human body can build many different ones with different structures and different function of molecules. Moreover, this large size of most carbon-containing molecules. Water makes up 50 to 60% of an adult's total body mass. All other inorganic compounds add only to 1 to 2%. These are relatively simple compounds whose molecules have only a few atoms cannot be used by cells to perform complicated biological functions. Many organic molecules, on the other hand, are relatively large and have unique characteristics that allow them to carry out complex functions. Important categories of organic compounds which make up roughly 40% of body mass include carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids, and adenosine trifosfate. Okay, not said how much carbon. Even though they are a large and diverse group of organic compounds, carbohydrates, they are only 2 to 3%, but not carbon. Okay, carbohydrates, not carbon. Said here. Moreover, the large size of most carbon-containing molecules and the fact that some do not dissolve easily in water make them useful materials for building body structures. And some of them are also not dissolving in water. So 1 to 1,000, possible to build completely different structures and their functions, and some of them are also not dissolving in water. Organic compounds are held together mostly or entirely by covalent bonds. Bonded together with covalent bonds. Carbon has 4 electrons in its outer shell. 4 carbon 4. It can bond covalently with a variety of atoms, including other carbon atoms. Other carbon to form the rings, straight and branches in rings, straight and branch form. Other elements that most often bond with carbon in organic compounds are hydrogen, 1 bond, or oxygen with 2, or nitrogen with 3. Hydrogen 1, oxygen 2, nitrogen 3. Hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. additional elements are present but only in a few organic compounds. The chain of carbon atoms in an organic molecule is called the carbon skeleton. All these carbons are called the carbon skeleton in such a molecule. Most of these carbons are bonded to hydrogen bonds. We haven't bonded most of them to hydrogen. Attached to the carbon skeleton are distinctive functional groups in which other elements form bonds with carbon and hydrogen atoms. Each type of functional group has a specific arrangement of atoms that confers characteristic chemical properties on organic molecules. So the carbon skeleton, and then there can be a functional group attached. Another element attaches to the carbon and hydrogen, and they're having different arrangement. And different properties. Small of them together can become larger macromolecules. Most of them are polymers. They are formed together as covalent with identical or similar building block molecules together. These are small ones are called monomers. And isomers are 1-glucose fructose C6H12. I don't know, should we do the presentation? Let's do it. Macromolecules are usually polymers. These are large molecules formed by covalent bonding of many identical or similar small building block molecules called monomers. Carbon. Carbon can be used in a human body because it can make bonds with other carbon, with one, for example, or even with thousands. Another reason is that there are some which also don't dissolve in water. And all these carbons when together are called the carbon skeleton. And usually to these carbons then attaches a hydrogen. Carbons have 4 electrons in the outermost valence shell, and it can make a covalent bond, that is the usual form of bonding with other things, with 1 covalent bond with hydrogen, with 2 with oxygen, and with 3 with nitrogen, for example. And there can be then a functional group, there's then another element attached to the carbon and the hydrogen. And such a small monomer of the carbon skeleton and the hydrogen together, then they can come together through dehydration, so a hydrogen comes away from one of the monomer and the hydroxyl from the other one away, and then they're together. And they can also be split up again through the opposite, through hydrolysis, so water comes to it. And if such monomers are together, they can, if similar or identical monomers are all coming together, they are forming then a polymer. So many together, a polymer then. And if they're very big, they're called then macromolecules, so large ones of them. There can be isomers. That is basically, so there can be C6H12O6, that is glucose and fructose. The only difference between glucose and fructose is that these 6 carbon, 12 hydrogen and 6 oxygen are sorted differently. So an isomer is the same ingredients but differently sorted. Glucose and fructose is the same stuff technically, but it's differently sorted. And that is an isomer. And that is according to Gerard Tatoga and Sandra Grabowski's Principles of Anatomy and Physiology book on the page 42. But this is no substitute for medical knowledge. I'm going to go and stop the camera. Now, I'm not completely sure if you have a proper conclusion to all 3, 4, 5 parts which we did about that. But it could be that it is one, because in these parts we didn't really understand what it is and we went into sideways. And now we explained what was actually said here. I think we said nothing wrong and explained what was said here. So why shouldn't that be not a good conclusion to the 4 or 5 chapters? If not, we will come back to that and do it again, and we're going to talk more about carbons and the functional groups, which was not at the bottom, which is the presentation, which was excluded it from the title. Now, that was not carbon and biochemistry. If you were here for biochemistry, you can go directly to the next part of biochemistry where we will continue. At one point, we're going to talk again about carbons and functional groups. If you stay here and participate in our shortened 2-minute standing tiptoe yoga, wenn es die Arme ist, feet together, believe in, arms up, come up to 10 toes. Out and down, come with the weight always to the big toe. In and up. Out and down. In and up. Out up to the side. In and up. Out to the other side. In and up, make an inch space between the feet. Out to the side. In and up. Out and down a bit. In and up. Out up to the side. In and up. Out and into the knees. In and up. Out and down. In and up. Out and sink down. This can go onto the knees. In and up. Out and down. In and up. Out and down. One foot points in front, the other one in front. Also front in. Out with the front leg, come from step toes. Breathe in. Reach in front. Out, lean back. Breathe in, straighten the front leg. Out, bend it. Middle, change the position of the feet. Breathe in. Out with the front leg. Up onto step toe. Between the each in front. Out and back. In, straighten the front leg. Out and down. Hands down, here down. Breathe in, the arms up. Out and down. Bend the right leg, stretch the left one. Change, stretch the right leg. In middle. Out, down. In and up with the hands. Out and down with the hands. That was the shortened tiptoe yoga. I thank you very much. In the next.